analogy here I would use is that in addition to power and water, intelligence is actually the third utility human civilization is going to have because it's cheaper, it's faster, it's accessible, and it's everywhere. And so intelligence, AI, is actually the third utility of human civilization. It's general purpose, and nothing, compares to it, except water and power. And so that's what Edge AI is. Basically, they are moving the capability of AI from the cloud to your devices near you. And so the same scenario, I mean, the same pattern, applies to the factory. So I think that's the friction that every leader or every CEO is having now in terms of AI adoption. Because, well, to be honest, it's really hard to calculate the return on investment when you try to invest into AI. There's just this a long and an indirect links between your investment and your revenue or profit. So the link is there, you know that, but it's vague and it's a really, a long process, of calculating, what you really get when after you adopt the AI. So yes, we do see that. We do see a very common pattern that okay, CEOs they know okay we need to use AI and we need to use for this workflow or that workflow, but what's the benefit? Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think, every enterprise, everyone is just they're just in between. So they have their legacy systems over there, and it's really hard to discard, legacy systems because, there's data locking issues, there are interface issues, there are workflow issues. You can just simply, toss away, any legacy systems that is already there. And so it's out of the question that people started, using AI by putting, like you said, an AI layer on top of these systems.
Welcome to the AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Ashley Braganza, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Sega Cheng from iKala to this episode. Sega, before we get started, could I just ask you to introduce yourself and to introduce iKala, please?
Of course. Thank you for having me today, Ashley. Such a pleasure to talk about AI, with you. So, hi, everyone. I'm Sega, co-founder and chairman of iKala. So, iKala is a company founded back in 2012, and we are providing AI sovereign solutions, adoption solutions to our enterprise customers. So, we are basically a B2B companies that provides, from the infrastructure all the way up to the AI for marketing. And so we are providing the full stack AI solution. Whoever wants to use AI, they can just come to us and we will provide a total solution to them. So that's what we are doing right now. So for me, I spent 5 years as a software engineer at Google in Mountain View and Taiwan, having worked on Android Media Framework, Google Maps, Google Search, introducing machine learning. One of the pioneer engineers who introduced machine learning to Google products across the board. So yeah, that's a short history of my career. I hold a master's degree in computer science from Stanford, and later I took those lessons back to Asia and Taiwan to start iKala. So it has been, an overwhelming, 12 years now since iKala was founded. So yeah, very happy to be here and talking about more about AI adoption. So we position ourselves as Asia's AI enabler. So we have a complete flagship products over there, and happy to share more later in this podcast.
Sega, thank you for that introduction, and in looking forward to this conversation, because there is so much going on, not just geopolitically, but certainly in terms of the the stack, the AI stack that you're talking about. And in fact, I was in Parliament yesterday doing a talk on exactly the topic that you just mentioned, which is looking at sovereignty. So I'm really looking forward to exploring this with you. I thought just as a starting point, Sega, perhaps we could just you could give us an overview of kind of what's the situation in Taiwan and with Taiwanese companies. What's the state of adoption of AI in Taiwan?
Yeah, I think Taiwan is pretty much well known, for TSMC. So while Taiwan basically, manufacture over 90% of the AI chips in the world. And that's why there is so much, geopolitical tension, between China, US, and Taiwan because of the AI chips. And so, well, we have a really strong semicon industry here in Taiwan. And in addition to chips, we also manufacture, assemble more than 90%, more than 95% of the AI servers in the world. And so we have a really strong hardware industry over here in Taiwan. But well, pros and cons. Well, the hardware industry here basically forms a gravitational force there that pretty much, drains all the resources, here in the industry. Talent, water, power, and also even land. So we have this strong hardware industry, but at the same time, in terms of the software industry, we are actually, lagging behind because the software, I mean, the software adoption or the software industry itself in Taiwan trails our hardware strength by a wide margin. And so we make the picks and shovels for the global AI gold rush, and we are still learning how to dig with them ourselves. And so in terms of the AI adoption, Taiwan, of course, is not on the, like in the top 10, around the world. So, well, there was this Microsoft AI Economy Institute, report released in Q1 saying that, okay, Taiwan ranked around 20 globally in terms of AI adoption rate. And so that was about 32% generative AI diffusion rate. So but the other leaders are UAE, Singapore, and Norway. So even though we are Taiwan here, we are doing really well in manufacturing AI chips, which is badly needed, by almost everyone in the world. But we are still catching up, in terms of AI adoption here in Taiwan. So very different scenario, for software and hardware industry here.
And when people think of Taiwan, I mean, you're absolutely right. They think of the hardware that gets produced that is basically allowing AI to be adopted on a global basis. But
Right.
but if I were to kind of go into industries such as, say, banking, manufacturing, services, healthcare, are is AI being adopted at that level, at the level of those industries and organizations?
More than 70% of the Taiwan's business have not genuinely adopted AI. Of course, there are different, pioneers and early adopters in different sectors covering FSI, retail, manufacturing. Of course, like companies like TSMC, MediaTek, they are already using AI to automate their chip design process or their chip manufacturing process, and that's cutting edge, that's for sure. But for most of the SMEs here, just like any, other countries in the world, around 70% of them are still, lagging behind. They are still watching. And so only the top 30% early adopters, they are adopting AI now. And that's cross-cutting, across different sectors. So again, we are seeing similar patterns, not just in Taiwan, but also in the Pan-Asia region. Only there are just these, 20 or 30% early adopters of AI. And so that's cross-cutting, across different sectors. So that's what we are seeing now also here in Taiwan.
So and looking more broadly, then, what are you seeing across the region, across the countries in the region around Asia?
Okay, so I think the people are just getting to know how they can really integrate AI into their workflow. well, under business scenario. And that's a totally different landscape compared to individual adoption because um, everyone is using AI right now. Yeah, so for example, in our daily life, we will use AI search on Google, and that's almost by default, right? Because that's something that Google already built up and make it the default on your cell phones. And we are writing emails or writing report or even making slides, preparing the interview, everything. We are using AI right now. So for individual adoption, that's definitely the penetration is definitely high, and especially in Taiwan. So I think in our company alone, more than 60% of the people are using AI daily, to help daily works to get their work done. But in terms of business scenario, it's all about changing your workflow. So generally, it goes back to the 30%, 70%, the distribution there. So enterprises in Asia are just getting started, to put together all the data they need, and on top of that, um, put a LLM, on top of that to really change their workflow. So I think enterprise adoption just got started, and the similar pattern happened, not just in Taiwan but also in Japan and Singapore, from our customer base. And so, but I think the country that is leading the AI adoption, that would be China, because they have their own open source AI models strategy, especially on a state level. So the AI adoption in China is basically a state-led effort, and the strategy is totally different from the rest of the world. And so for the rest of the world, it is always 30/70 and 20/80, that Pareto ratios there. But for China, we are seeing a massive adoption of AI pretty fast. So that's the landscape we're seeing now here in Asia.
I mean, very often what we're seeing, certainly and I'm seeing in companies in the UK and elsewhere, is they're taking the AI layer, if you like, and kind of laying it over what they are currently doing.
Yeah.
And rather than kind of using it to really genuinely transform the business, what
Yeah.
are you seeing in terms of your customer base and in terms of the companies that you're talking to? Are they using AI, even that 30%? Are they using AI to kind of just make the legacy
Yeah.
processes better, or are they genuinely transforming?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think, every enterprise, everyone is just they're just in between. So they have their legacy systems over there, and it's really hard to discard, legacy systems because, there's data locking issues, there are interface issues, there are workflow issues. You can just simply, toss away, any legacy systems that is already there. And so it's out of the question that people started, using AI by putting, like you said, an AI layer on top of these systems. Like, I think iKala itself is a great example. So we have this product, software as a service product called Color. So it's a data platform that collects over 300 million data from influencers and creators and provide data insight and analysis to marketers and advertisers for influencer marketing. That's the purpose of the data platform. So initially, we started this platform back in 2018, and it has been almost 7 to 8 years since we started doing this platform. And as you know, as everyone knows, generative AI became popular starting 2022. And so we kind of face this, embarrassing situation if we have to redo the whole system with generative AI, or we just, put out a chatbot, on top of the existing systems. I think most people will go for the latter option because the system was there, and it is really hard to rewrite a massive, software as a service system from scratch. You can't just see you can't simply do it overnight. So this is a kind of balance, every company, especially the software company and people who rely on, general IT systems will do because, the legacy system it's simply really hard to replace them. And there's data locking issues. So I think people will first go for the second approach by mounting LLM or chatbot on top of their existing system. And then later, they will start building a side project from scratch and to transform and migration their existing data step by step until the whole company goes AI native. So AI adoption is actually an ongoing process. It's not something that you have just do once and then you're done there. No, it's an ongoing process, whether in terms of product or in terms of existing systems or in terms of people or even in terms of workflow. It's an ongoing transformation that you have to take care of the all the legacy systems, people, and workflow. And you just have to get there, step by step. And there's no shortcut, to this.
Sega, thank you for that response, and which was incredibly comprehensive. And I guess I'm seeing a tension here, and
Mhm.
I know from talking to companies in the UK that there's a similar kind of tension. On the one hand, there's the business case that companies have to put up, which says, we want to invest in AI
Yeah.
because we think we're going to get these benefits. Um,
Mhm.
but then they overlay the AI on their existing legacy systems, the existing legacy structures, more
Yeah.
importantly, the kind of legacy mindset of the people.
Yeah.
And so they put the investment in, they buy the AI systems, but then they find they don't get the benefit because that change hasn't happened. Is that something you're seeing as well, that this tension between, on the one hand, trying to get the benefits from AI, but then
Yeah.
not seeing the changes through?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the friction that every leader or every CEO is having now in terms of AI adoption. Because, well, um, to be honest, it's really hard to calculate the return on investment when you try to invest into AI. There's just this a long and an indirect links between your investment and your revenue or profit. So the link is there, that, but it's vague and it's a really, long and a long process, of calculating, what you really get when after you adopt the AI. So yes, we do see that. We do see a very common pattern that okay, CEOs they know okay we need to use AI and we need to use for this workflow or that workflow, but what's the benefit over there? And that's the next question, every CEO needs to answer. So we are giving the suggestions, of aiming for small wins to start with. And because if you can scope your project in terms of AI adoption, whether it's a single workflow in your crew, in your workforce, and that would be easier to measure, the benefit that you're really reaping, from AI. And we do see that a very common proof of concept project is coming from AI for marketing because we need to because the leaders and all the employees they have to see real deal benefits of using AI. They have to I mean the results should be visual. The results should be real deal and just there. And so typically we started, providing AI for marketing solutions, to enterprises who are still hesitating about adopting AI because marketing, that's a direct interaction, with the customers, with their customer base, and they can see immediate results from using AI, whether it's a 2 points, 2 points up in their, ads targeting position, or it's a 20% increase in their, social media post, things like this. They can feel the power of AI, by using it in marketing first. And so I think that's a really good example or really a good reference, to the entire organization who are still hesitating to use AI. They can start, not just internally, with their existing workflows or their legacy systems, because that's simply a lot of friction over there. Because again, it's 2080 principle. 80% of the AI adoption efforts goes into data collection and data cleansing, all that stuff. Only 20% goes into, algorithm operation or even machine learning, those fancy stuff. So to be honest, if you are doing AI adoption, you are actually doing data plumbing. And that's the norm, for everyone in the world. You are not alone. Everyone is just like, okay, in terms of AI adoption, sounds fancy, sounds great, but 80% of the time, it goes into data plumbing. And so why not start it, with something you can immediately, feel the benefits when adopting AI? I think starting from marketing, that's a fantastic way to start, because it's it will it will also educate or even teach you what customers really want right now before you're getting started with any internal AI adoption project. So yeah, that would be the suggestion I would give to business owners or anyone who are still hesitating about this.
Thank you for that. Moving the conversation on, um, you mentioned a bit earlier this issue of software and that Taiwan is, miles ahead in terms of hardware relative to software.
Yeah.
Um, I just wondered, do you think the next wave of AI will depend on, not just the hardware, but the software as well?
Yeah. I do believe so. So, well, there's one, motto I have now. I think I can also share this with all the business owners or any startup, founders. So, well, that motto is consider software soft. I think that's a very important concept for decades or even, centuries to come. I mean, everyone is using Gemini, ChatGPT Codex, or even Claude Code, to do AI coding. And well, as you can see, a lot of the news from the big tech, their CEOs, they are focusing on communicating the percentage of code that is currently read, by AI, you know, and they're touting this. They're touting like, okay, 50% is written by AI right now, or even 70% is even, or even there's already a closed loop that AI basically evolves itself, and there's no human intervention at all. And so this is happening, and it is still speeding up. That software is basically a solved problem, for the next 3 or 5 years. And so we are already in a paradigm shift of producing software. I mean, producing software is basically the cost of producing software is basically driven down to zero. And once you consider software solved, well, the next question you have to ask must be, okay, then where does the value come from in terms of software? And so it goes back to vertical or even sector applications. And we are seeing that um, medicine companies, agriculture companies, they are all using AI. They are all automating, their applications, with more AI, since software can be produced really, really quick. And of course, AI is also, used in the military, in defense right now. And so the next paradigm we are seeing now is that people are considering software soft, and they are just thinking about how to apply software on top of, coupling, with their hardware or even with their sector applications. So that's what we are seeing now.
And where does edge AI fit into this story? Because that's another phrase that gets used an awful lot.
Yeah, I think Edge AI is definitely, just get started, because previously there's no way it is out of the question that we can put a large language model, like into your camera or into your robotic arms. There's no way we can do that, and while at the same time make the application really useful. But right now, since we have been optimizing, the size of the AI and the capability of AI, it basically the speed of the evolution is even faster than traditional Moore's law. So right now, every 7 months, we double the capability of AI, and that's way faster than hardware's Moore's law. And so smaller, cheaper, but more capable. And so that's why AI Edge is going to make a blast for the coming years. And so we are seeing manufacturing, we are seeing factories. They are putting their VLM model, visual language models, into their assembling lines, into their cameras, into their robots working in the warehouse or into the delivery house. The robots are working in, and so we will see a massive adoption of edge AI first from the assembly lines, warehouses, manufacturing factories. These are already happening. And companies like TSMC or MediaTek or all the AI chip manufacturing companies here, they are also using VLM to identify the defects, from their produce. And so that's something that is already happening. They are raising their accuracy of the production from 99% to 99.9%. And there will be more nines, for the next couple of years. So edge AI, it definitely falls into the enterprise scenarios pretty well. And of course, we are seeing, like in terms of the military or defense sector, that's a great example of how edge AI, can really come into use. And so people are using drones, in everything like agriculture, defense, or military. And drones now can really act autonomously, completely without internet connection or without any communication capability, with the remote controllers. They can basically act on their own. And so that's the advancement now we are seeing, everywhere. So edge AI, definitely a very hot topic, going forward.
I've fallen into a trap of my own making by using a term like edge AI. Sega, in a sentence or two, explain to the audience who may not be familiar with that term, what is edge AI?
Okay, so AGI basically means that, okay, well, much like that, you are chatting with ChatGPT or Gemini online with the internet connection. We are actually putting this kind of capability, into a devices that may or may not have internet connection. So, well, just think about if of course, you got a cell phone in your hands, right? Well, if one day you have no connections, to the internet and you're just off the grid and you're just offline. And but you still wanted to do like you're traveling, you still wanted to do translation because you're visiting Japan, and you cannot speak Japanese, and and you have no internet connection right now. And can your cell phone help you go through all the booking all the tickets or all the hotels? And Edge AI can come to help. So right now, big tech like Google or like OpenAI, they are putting their language models into their devices, and they want this AI to work offline without internet connections. And so that's what Edge AI is. Basically, they are moving the capability of AI from the cloud to your devices near you. And so the same scenario, I mean, the same pattern, applies to the factory, to manufacturing. That, well, rather than rely on AI on the cloud to do all the reasoning or inference, you can now have that capability or having your own AI hardware integrated with larger language models, but provide the same capability of chatting or inference, reasoning, or reading the images, completely without internet connection. That's where the edge AI, that's what edge AI is.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you digging me out of that hole for using some AI jargon and then not explaining it, but you have covered that so beautifully. Thank you. Um,
Thank you.
Tell me, Sega, Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing strength is clearly it's world class.
Yeah.
How is this creating strategic advantage in terms of the AI value chain?
Okay, so I think even though we have a very strong semicon industry, manufacturing industry here in Taiwan, business owners here, especially the hardware giants or conglomerates, they are still looking for ways to reap the compounding value of integrating software and hardware together. And so, well, because the hardware business is totally different from software. Software can be replicated overnight and can be adopted by millions or even billions of people, like in 1 week or even in 1 month. And that basically defies all the physical laws hardware the hardware industry has. And so rather than just doing manufacturing, people here, especially from the manufacturing industry, they are also looking for if they can um, have a software hardware integration solution, and provide the solution to the world. So we are actually not just sitting here and want to manufacture doing all the IC components piece by piece, but we are the hardware giants here, they are upgrading themselves, and by exploring a lot of opportunities here that they want to do the software themselves as well, because we already do the hardware, and then why not on top of that put an AI layer out there, and then trying to explore the business of a platform. So this is something that the whole industry is exploring right now. So, but I think the business model is quite different, because for hardware manufacturing, you're just somebody that taking a position, an exact position, inside in the whole AI supply chain. Like you're designing chip and you're manufacturing chip, or you are doing IC packaging, or you are doing delivery. You have your positioning pretty clear. But for doing software, there's a lot of uncertainty, coming with that, because software it's about uncertainty, it's about iteration, and but for hardware, you cannot iterate a software, because that's way too expensive. But for software, it requires a totally different mindset of doing the business. So that's exactly the huge gap I'm also seeing here in Taiwan, because we got this OEM mindset that we can give you, we can deliver everything with precision and accuracy. But if you want to talk about, business development or marketing or branding or global talents, and that's something Taiwan is not really good at. So for Taiwan to really have to um to have explore the compounding value of software and hardware together, I'm seeing the gap of talents and of the business model mindsets here. That's the huge gaps we have here in Taiwan, even though we have a really strong hardware giant here.
Yes, and I guess kind of circling back to some of the conversation we had a bit earlier, this issue of
Mhm.
sovereignty, particularly in terms of the AI stack. Certainly,
Yeah,
I'm talking to companies in the UK, and they're talking about maybe starting to build chips in the
yeah,
UK to kind
yeah.
of enable that the UK to have a level of sovereignty in the
Yeah.
AI stack. How do you see that playing out in terms of now chip manufacturing, not just being kind of in Taiwan, but possibly in other countries as well?
Yeah, I think that's gonna happen everywhere, because sovereignty is so important for anyone. The analogy here I would use is that in addition to power and water, intelligence is actually the third utility human civilization is gonna have, because it's cheaper, it's faster, it's accessible, and it's everywhere. And so intelligence, AI, is actually the third utility of human civilization. It's general purpose, and nothing, compares to it, except water and power. And so, well, so it makes all the sense, for everyone to have their own utility at home, right? There's no way you can imagine that, okay, well, I would run short, in power or water. That would be a disaster, to your life, right? So, in the coming years, everyone should have its own intelligence, whether it's on the state level, on the enterprise level, or even on individual level. That's where the sovereignty comes from. So everyone wants to own their chip manufacturing capability, and that's totally reasonable. Well, the only problem here is the energy problem. So basically, well, what the whole world and the whole and every big tech is doing right now, or China is doing right now, they are translating every bit of the energy into token. So that's what we call the token economy. So it's just like, you purify the water and you provide that to the households. Well, it's exactly the same analogy here. And so again, we are seeing a similar pattern, based on history. So that's where the sovereignty comes from. So I think what complicates the matter is that okay, so AI is all about data, and so data should stay, not just in the cloud, of the big techs, their data centers, but also you have had a backup or a copy or multiple copies of the data you own in your home, in your country, or in your company. And so I think this sovereign AI is definitely gonna be everyone's consideration, especially for enterprises or state level. And so we are seeing that countries or enterprises, they are all building up their own data centers right now. So, well, it's already happening. So it's just about where you can find, more water and power, to sustain all these data centers. And so that's that definitely it's gonna be, going forward, it's gonna be there in terms of, own your own AI. That's the sovereign AI.
Sega, I know it has been a while trying to organize this particular interview with you, given your busy diary, but I am so glad we waited, and I'm so glad to have had you on this on the AI Adoption podcast. This interview has been fascinating because we've covered such a wide range of topics, and you've provided so many insights, not just into the situation and the in terms of Taiwan and Taiwanese companies, but you've provided such fantastic insights into how AI is genuinely transforming businesses and transforming states at some level. The issue around the hardware and this move, both in terms of Taiwan, but I think more generally to ensure that it's not just the hardware, but you need the hardware and the software. And for those countries that have been looking at have some advantage in terms of the software, I think what you're saying now is that from a sovereignty point of view, you need the hardware as well. I loved your point at the end around intelligence being the third utility. I have to say, I'd not kind of visualized it or conceptualized it in that way, but as soon as you said it, I thought to myself, I so agree with that point of view. Um, so it just leaves me to say thank you so much for taking your time to be on the AI Adoption podcast. And as ever, I would love to thank my listeners as well.
Thank you, Ashley. It's my pleasure, to share my insights in your podcast. Thank you.